Hi, I'm Megan. I am mom to 3 girls, ages 10, 6, and 2, and we use Ambleside Online for our curriculum, and we're in year 1 and year 4. So I wanted to just give people some quick videos to show them how we do some of the foundational Charlotte Mason practices. So today I'm going to talk a bit about narration, and our next video will be an actual narration example so you can see what it looks like in our home. I wanted to start by recommending this book, Know and Tell, The Art of Narration by Karen Glass. It is a phenomenal book. I feel like there's really nothing that I can say that isn't in this book. Karen Glass has written quite a few books. She's on the Ambleside Advisory and has a wealth of knowledge about all things Charlotte Mason. So here are a couple of quotes that I just want to read before I start. She says, "Narration is a skill. It becomes the key that builds our relationship with knowledge, develops our thinking skills, and gives us the power to collect our thoughts and relate them accurately and effectively, both in speech and in writing." And the next quote, "Because narration stimulates the mind to work, looking for order and making connections, it develops a synthetic habit of thinking in children." And synthetic thinking is integrated, not artificial. It can be contrasted with analytic thinking, in which learners are constantly asked to take apart what they are learning or break it down, thus losing the connections rather than making them themselves. This usual practice of questioning, in which a child is expected to produce an isolated piece of information, does not encourage synthetic thinking. Narration, on the other hand, requires a child to think about all the material and produce the relevant details in relation to one another. What a narrator tells has to make sense. And I'm going to link that book in the description, as well as a few articles for your further research. But I just want to talk about how our narration journey has gone. When my oldest daughter was in Y1, it was a challenge for us to narrate. She felt very stressed about the idea of coming up with her own retelling for whatever reason, and so I dropped it and we didn't start it. It took about a year for me to read Karen Glass's book and really see that there are multiple ways that we can encourage narration. And so I'll start with the basic one, with the most foundational one, and then give some alternatives too if you happen to have a reluctant narrator. And I will say, I think that when we just think it's this simple act of telling back or summarizing, it's easy to let it slide, and it's easy to think, no, maybe this doesn't matter, I'll let it go this time. But when you begin to see even the brain science, there's some fabulous articles that have nothing to do with Charlotte Mason that talk about narration being a real key to understanding and synthesizing. I think it's motivating for us to continue with the practice. So we started very small. I think maybe a paragraph, maybe even a sentence, and then work up from there. So there's no need to take an entire day's reading and ask your child to narrate that at first. And even as books grow in their complexity, you can take a step back and do just a page. And often my older narrator will say, "Can you just stop every page and let me narrate this particular book?" Until she gets more comfortable with the plot line. So once you can begin your lesson with always a narration, either yourself or your child, and say, "Can you tell me what happened last time?" And so that's another way of kind of cementing the information. And we do narration for every subject except for poetry, and free reading, just fun reading. So if it's Bible, we read the Bible story. We ask what happened last time. If it's an ongoing, like an Old Testament or a New Testament story, and then read the passage or read several verses and then ask for a narration. and eventually you can do this with your science work. You can do this with, I guess we don't do it with math either, but any literature books that we have, any history, they're all narrated. And if telling verbally is challenging for your child, one other option that we've had success with is a drawing narration. And so you can ask them to draw a scene from what they remembered, and oftentimes once they're done, you can ask them to tell you about their drawing, and it's an impetus for them to remember, and also that time that they've spent drawing gives their brain a little bit more marinating time for them to be able to bring all those thoughts together. So I'm looking down because I'm just petting this little guy in the grass and making sure he's not eating anything. So if you keep seeing me look down, that's what's down there. You can also try Lego people or Play-Doh, Barbie, stuffed animals, anything that might be visual, tactile for your student to show you. My kids love acting, so we've acted out narrations, and those work really well for things like fairy tales or fables. So those are some alternate ways, and if you have any more, please leave them in the comment box. And we're always looking for new ways to narrate and keep it fresh. So this is what you'd be doing with your Form 1 students, which would be roughly ages 6 to 9. And then around 9 or 10, depending on when you think your student is ready, you are going to transition to written narrations. And this is where I feel like Karen Glass's book really shines, because you see the example of a 9-year-old's written narration, and then that student at 10, and then at 12, and then at 14. And it's remarkable to see the progression, and it's comforting because you know that, okay, my child is not, there's nothing wrong. I need to trust the process, and she has so many examples. So that, again, that was really what helped me to realize it's okay to start small. It's okay to start with a narration, even with incorrect information in it, a narration that really doesn't have a lot of depth, because it's a skill that is going to build, and your child is going to get better and better at it. So maybe we've started with one written narration a week for the third term of year 3, and then starting the fall we'll do probably 2 a week, and that will, depending on how it goes, that will probably be first term 1 and 2, and possibly we'll add another one in term 3. We'll see. It depends, but I'm okay going slow and knowing that this is when you're going from orally narrating to writing, your child's narrations are probably going to get shorter, and they're probably going to be a lot of spelling errors when they're especially using some of the history terms or science terms. And one way to curb that is if you feel like there's some keywords that they need to know, you can write those on a whiteboard or a sticky note next to their notebook so that they have that, and that they're able to visualize it and spell it correctly. But it's going to be a jump for them to try to go from oral to written. So you can be patient with that process. And you really don't need to add anything else to the writing curriculum. Charlotte Mason wants you to become a deep thinker before being taught the mechanics of writing. So the art of processing words and language and synthesizing comes far before analyzing and before the mechanics of composition, which is something that you get into later on in upper middle school or high school years. And we do grammar once a week for about 15 minutes, and in addition to the dictation. So if you've seen the dictation video, there's some grammar in there too. But there's a dedicated grammar section, and I'll be using Strunk and White's book, The Elements of Style, which is a classic, and we'll just be doing one short page or lesson each week. So I can't even remember what the first one is. I think it might be on possessive. So, depending on where your child is. We've also been doing Mad Libs a lot, so my daughter's familiar with parts of speech, so that won't be something that I'll need to introduce, but that's a place to start. So I will post, again, I'll post some links below, and we'll give you guys some things to listen to and some other things to watch, and then I will also upload the video of a year 1 narration, and I think year 2 or year 4, my older daughter might be a little bit long to have to listen to me read and then listen to her narrate, so I'll see if I can find a creative way to do that. Maybe it'll be a story that most people are familiar with, and you can hear what her narration might be. So thanks, and hope that this was helpful.